beat Shelton from the get-go, and we were just locked in. Like, kids were watching huddle in class, but this was huge for us.
We executed. We were more intense. We made plays when we needed to. Kids were well prepared. They played their butt off, and I think that's a sign of what we're capable of.
We love coming in as the underdogs. We won it this week in practice. You know, we were prepared, and that brought confidence, and we played our ass off.
This is how it's supposed to be! Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to the Meat Grinder, your weekly dose of high school football in Connecticut. I'm your host, Sean Patrick Bowley, and with me is Pete Paguaga. Pete, how are you? What's up?
Good, Sean. Hanging in there, man. We're getting down to the home stretch. It's quite exciting.
And I always say this to start, but what a week we had. It was, you know, every week just crazy results, and there was none crazier than, well, I would say none crazier, but I did not expect 54-0 Fairfield Prep over Shelton. I don't think anybody expected 54-0 over Shelton. Shelton! Like, this wasn't like, there have been great, big Fairfield Prep victories. I mean, I remember one that basically changed the SEC forever. 75-0 over East Haven in 2003. The next year, they realigned into large schools and small schools. And they, you know, when they invited foreign and law to come in, and, you know, that changed things. But that was their biggest win since then. But you never hear them. You never hear Fairfield Prep beating Shelton by that much. It was an obliteration. I'm thinking, like, for the old timers out there, remember the Chicago Bears when they beat the Dallas Cowboys in 1985. They beat Landry's Cowboys 55 to whoever it was, the ridiculous. And that basically ended the Cowboys dynasty under Landry back in 85 and started the Bears' rise to Super Bowl champs. That's how this felt. You know, that's how this felt. And I said, Pete, we didn't, you know, Pete, I mean, what did you think? You weren't there, but
stunned. Look, not only is this a Fairfield Prep Shelton, two teams in the SEC, two top teams in the SEC, but these were two top 10 teams in the poll, teams fighting for playoff spots. I mean, we've seen scores like that in time, and it's usually like a really good team and a team that's struggling. This was two teams that are competing for spots to compete for a state title. It was shocking. It was stunning. It was surprising.
Keep pulling out the superlatives. It was everything.
It was everything. Exactly. And like, good for Fairfield Prep. I don't know what the heck happened with Shelton, but mind blowing.
As Mike DeFelice said, I got a big old welt on my bottom right now. You know, what can you do? You just kind of, Shelton's season far from over. There's nothing they could do. They got a butt whooping. That's the bottom line. It's like 2 years ago when Shelton went in there, fired up to beat Fairfield Prep. It was just a reverse of that. This was Fairfield Prep saying, we're here, man. Get used to it. And it was dominant. From the get-go, from the opening kickoff, it was Ryan O'Connell and the guys completely just shutting Shelton down. 1 first down all game and 21 total yards. The Jesuits got started early with a 23-point first quarter. You had Jonathan Morris recovering a fumble on Shelton's second possession, and then Dan Barnick scoring the first of his 2 touchdowns on a 33-yard run up the sidelines. He scored another to make it 14-0. And then he had Tymaine Smith, what a great game he had, stripping Tyler Rich and going 38 yards the other way for a 21-0 Fairfield Prep lead, and they were off to the races. You had Dan Mullen getting a safety in there after a Sean Donahue sack. Fairfield Prep put its foot on the gas and floored it for 4 quarters. It was 33-0 at the half. Next thing you know, it was 40-0. I lost track. I even tweeted the wrong score out. We had Pete. We had the bomb squad chirping at us. I got to the game. I parked behind the school because I knew last time getting out of there was ridiculous because I was parked in the parking lot and it was like a madhouse getting out. I had to wait like an hour to get out of there. This time I parked a walk away, but within a way just to get out on the North Benson Road. As soon as I get there, it's like these guys, they had they had eagle eyes. The bomb squad, they're on the lookout. They're like, game time, come over here. No, I wasn't doing that. I get to the stadium, they're all there chirping at us. Two votes. How could you not vote for us? And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, geez, you lost against Greenwich. It's a different Fairfield Prep team now, but yeah, we got, they're all talking about us. Hellstern, we're going to have Keith Hellstern on the show to talk a little prep football because why not? It was that dominant, but they were all saying, nobody picked you. Just keep doing anything. It's stuck in their craw, Pete. We were the bad. It was like, I didn't know who was worse. Either you were Shelton or us. Who was the bad guys? I don't know.
Oh, it's definitely us. We're always the bad guys. But I'm just wondering, Shelton's got one game left against Cheshire. They didn't really get that many points from Derby's forfeit. How does Shelton recover?
Well,
how do you come back from a 54-0 butt kicking?
Well, they've done it before, right? They lost 41-7 to Trumbull. Came back from that, got back into our good graces. Now they're back out.
Yeah, but if the playoffs started today, they'd be going back to Rafferty.
We would, yeah. They would be right now. Fairfield Prep now climbing to number 2 in the Class L standings. Shelton drops down only to 7. Not too terrible because they have the Derby forfeit. But that's, as you said, that's not getting them a lot of points. Now they got to beat Cheshire, and they got to hope that they can maintain that position. Now, I'm going to preface this. A lot of this is going to be talking about, we're going to talk about a lot about the playoffs here. But, obviously Fairfield Prep basically cementing their spot. I mean, they still got to beat Xavier. They still got to beat West Haven, but I think they've accrued enough points, even if they happen to falter Bolton, which I doubt. I think they'll be do enough to survive this. But, I think everyone with about 7, I think everyone who's 7-1 right now, West Haven, which held off Cheshire in an amazing game. Southington, Hall, which lost its first game. We'll get that in a second. New Canaan, and I think even, obviously Darien at 8-0. I think those teams are all going to get in. I think it's a matter of finding out which 7-2, which 2-loss team. Shelton, Staples, which 2 of them are going to get in here. Maybe even a 3-loss if they lose. Staples happen to lose. If Hamden happens to lose. If those who lose, Shelton's going to be in a great spot if they beat Cheshire. But there is room here. Trumbull, certainly.
Greenwich.
Yeah, Greenwich. Not so much Newtown and Norwalk, but
Greenwich could beat Stanford and Staples and be 7-3 and have accumulated more points than some 2-loss teams.
Greenwich is in a really good spot because they can knock out the team that's ahead of them.
Yep.
And with the new so if you're not 2-2 with this, it's a little different than years past. Very quickly, 10 wins, 100 wins, 100 points for a win, 10 points for every win that your opponent that you beat gets. And now we have this new thing, and it's an average of how many games you play. And now we have this new thing called strength of schedule points. And I'll be honest with you, I tried going through it yesterday, Sunday, couldn't do it. You gave me a tutorial this morning, and it was confusing. It was worse than taking pre-calc in high school. Which, for any New Yorkers out there, I failed the Math B Regents twice my junior year. The schedule points is making it ridiculously tough because it's almost like how did I describe it? It's like the limbo levels of Inception. That's where we are. That's what we did. So now you got to find, because now you're getting points for every win all of your opponents had, not just the ones you beat. And you get 5 points for every single one, and they added that to the total. So now you got to drill down to see not just who's playing who and what, but how many wins. It's a mess. And if you're a coach trying to figure this out, it's a mess. Thank God you only have to do it for yourself, but we have to do it for our 4 classes. It's ridiculous. So
this is harder to figure out than the NBA salary cap, which makes no sense. This is just they've overcomplicated this.
Yeah.
I get it. I understand what the reasoning for it is, but this is so overcomplicated.
It wasn't.
It's just way too complicated.
Yeah, I know. It's not as big. The good news is it's not as big a deal as it was in 2009 when we had 6 playoff races. There was only 4 teams getting in.
Yeah.
Because it was up in the air. You didn't know, and you needed, because it was 4 teams and all these teams vying for 4 spots. You didn't know who was even close until the last day. That's what made it so excited. Then they added this. Now it's 8 for each class. And now it's like teams qualified week 7, which is, I suspect, I didn't figure it out, but I'm pretty sure Darien is qualified. If not, it's very close. So getting back to this, so Prep, Buchanan Hall, Southington, West Haven. West Haven, that was a great win, by the way. We talked a little bit about them. We talked to Rich Boucher before the season, and he said, look, if we start off great, it's going to be because of our schedule. We'll find out how good we are late. And right now, listen, their schedule still isn't good. They lost to Hamden early, but beating Notre Dame, West Haven, which, okay, not great, but still, that's a tier 1 team. And then coming back and beating a pretty good Cheshire team that hasn't given up yet, going down, which went right down the field, almost pulled that game out with a great play at the goal line. Stopped at the 1-yard line as time expired. So West Haven put themselves into this whole big thing here. The one that's really throwing a monkey wrench into is Hamden, which just absolutely crushed Sheehan, which we were all afraid of. Now Sheehan, Class S school, competing against a double L school to get into Class S playoffs. They had to do it 2 years ago too, and they, still, even with Bogan and all those guys, it wasn't a done deal until later in the game, if I remember correctly. But
it's looking at it, Hamden's not easy the rest of the way. Law is not a bad M team. And then, the Green Bowl on Thanksgiving. And if Notre Dame, West Haven's fully healthy, when was the last time Hamden won that game?
Yeah. It's been, 2005.
It's been a long time. I just remember our friend of the program, Colin McDonough, Hamden graduate, native, used to work at the Current. He tweeted at me on Thanksgiving. He goes, best part of the day, Hamden didn't lose the Green Bowl this year. So, it's their road is not easy by any stretch of the imagination. No, but if you look at it, you say, well, Hamden did beat West Haven, who was sitting there at 6.
Yeah.
They control. The thing is, Hamden controls their destiny. Yeah. And that's what you want at this point. You look at Staples and Greenwich, they're going to play. Trumbull has St. Joe's. There's a lot that, even if Hamden does stumble in one of those games, there's a lot more that could go wrong underneath them that could just leave them up there. Though I think Greenwich wins both of those games at 7-3. Again, not a math guy, but there are a lot of points.
Greenwich certainly not out of the wood. Well, certainly not out of it yet. I mean, they could get it. Their schedule points. They already have 235 right now, and it's going to go up when they play Staples. They're in a good spot. Staples needs also in a good spot. They got Ridgefield and Greenwich, so they could possibly leapfrog here if they win those 2 games. Hamden not quite out of it. They're not going to get any points from West Hill. Their scheduled points are not great. 175 right now. That's not going to go up. Notre Dame's not helping them out. But the good news for Hamden is they could probably win all those 3 games. And Notre Dame, Notre Dame got smoked. It looks like they've kind of, after getting beat by West Haven, Pacoda going down, they got smoked by Xavier last week, 35-0. And that they needed that game badly, and now they're pretty much done. They got basically 2 games left, and that'll be it.
So Greenwich is in the best spot.
Greenwich is in a good spot. I mean, they're number 10 right now. They're in a good spot. And Trumbull coming up with a big win to kind of put themselves into the mix here.
They have to beat St. Joe's, though. Trumbull has to beat St. Joe's.
Well, that's true.
Maybe that's where I'll go on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that should be a fun one. That'll be on Thanksgiving Day, so that'll be good. It's been a long time. But Hamden, again, Cameron Winder and Sam Duma, basically with a 300 yards rushing offense against Sheehan, and I think they scored 5 touchdowns together. So that's, hey, good for Hamden to get in. Its schedule is just, the SEC's got to do something about this tier thing. Is just It's a failure.
This tier thing can't work if you're trying to do the alliance schedule.
Yeah. Well, I think that's
he's pulling his conference into two different directions.
You need to balance it a little bit better. They did go to tiers so they could do that. That's the thing. You know what I mean? But his Hamden schedule, they're one of the largest schools in the state, and I know they have struggled, and you want to help them out a little bit, that's fine. But, like, giving your best teams the best teams in the other conferences, where you're giving Hamden nobodies, and then you also have them playing nobodies in your, or even smaller schools in your conference, that's, you're going to get Hamden and West Haven in, and everyone's going to be cheering, and they're going to get smoked in the playoffs.
Well,
maybe West Haven doesn't, but
here's the thing.
Not good.
What, 2017 when Hand won with Phoenix Billings as a sophomore?
Yeah.
They were, a lot of people are like, yeah, but a lot of people are like, oh, well, Hand was getting love when they were in tier 2. No, they weren't. Hand wasn't ranked going into that. They had one loss. They were 9-1 going into the state playoffs in Class L. They were not ranked.
Yeah,
they
the
won
game
Class
was
L.
Cross, if I remember.
Yeah, they won Class L and were ranked the number 2 team in the state, and they stayed in that top 3 until the beginning of this year. But they weren't getting love. No one was like, oh my God, this Hand team's so good. It was like, they're playing no one. Now here's the time, put up or shut up in the playoffs. And they went out and they won the whole damn thing.
Playoffs,
so, if you want
I think any coach in the league
playing that schedule, yeah. But I'm saying playing the schedule that West Haven and Hamden has had, well, you want respect, go out, win the whole thing, win a playoff game. Yeah. Do something. Don't bow out in the first round and say, well, we deserve respect, because you're not going to get it.
Hamden schedule. I mean, let's look at it real quick. Hill House, they won by 2. Beat West Haven. That's their best one, 13-6 in overtime. Great game by, I forget who it was. It was Weiner. Beat West Haven, 13-6 in overtime. McMahon beat by 20. Lost their tier 1 game versus North Haven. North Haven, which hadn't won a game yet, smoked them, basically, 28-7. Now, North Haven's a tough team, but then Bunnell beat them, came to their house, beat them in overtime. Now, Bunnell, the next week, went out to Hand and got crushed, like 50-14 or something like that. Then Hamden came back against a Wilbur Crossing that's sketchy at best, beat them by 2 touchdowns, 14-0. Then they had the Sheen game. They're probably their best win in a year, their most complete one. But now you're looking at, then they have Law, West Hill. None of these are going to be confused with, Newtown's or Shelton schedule or Fairfield Prep.
So, you look at, Hamden and Staples are vying for the 8th spot. Hamden has Law, West Hill, Notre Dame. Staples has Ridgefield, Greenwich.
Yeah.
That's all you need to know. But they're competing for the same spot.
This is not the NFL. You don't give the best teams harder schedules next year because they can't exactly do anything. You can't go to the draft. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's no draft or free agency.
I don't like the SEC's done this for a long time. I hate it. I do not like it. You need to balance it out. That's the bottom line. And Hamden's schedule is frankly not good. And they're the beneficiaries of it. Are they a good team? They're definitely a better team than they've been. But
yeah,
we'll see how good. If they go to Darien and get beat 60-0, then
I'm just all the people who are in our DMs, respect. You're not getting it in the regular season. So go do what Hand did 3-4 years ago. Go out and win a game in the playoffs. Shut us up by winning important games.
Speaking of which, team that was undefeated going into this big game against Maloney. You've been saying it all year, Pete. You were saying Hall was a paper tiger, and sure enough, they did not look good. What happened in that game?
Maloney got off the bus. I mean, that's really it. Maloney's hands down the better team. It wasn't even close. Like, look, Leo Pereira had a couple of snaps in the first drive, left, came back a couple of times, left, didn't play in the second half. He's good. We're not denying that he's not a good player. It wouldn't have mattered. Maloney's defense was that good that night. They've been playing that good all year. The offense is rolling right now. Angel Arcee threw for 2 more touchdowns. Josh Bogninsky rushed for 5 touchdowns, 320 yards on 50 carries. I just don't think that there's a team in the CCC right now on their schedule that can beat Maloney the rest of the way. They don't play Windsor. And look, I don't want people to think that I've been sitting here rooting for Hall to lose, though sometimes it might have come off like that.
Oh, it's
just
like that.
yeah. Well, I take a lot of pride in voting in the New Haven Register top 10 poll. It's been around longer than I've been alive. It's been around longer than you've been alive, Sean. It's been around longer than the CIAC has hosted football championships. I take a lot of pride in my vote. And the fact that Hall kept shooting up the ballot or shooting up the rankings every week drove me insane, because they're not a bad team, but they're not a top 4 team in the state. They're not a top 3 team in the state. They're not a top 5 team in the state. And the poll does that. Teams get overinflated and they shoot up the rankings. And, you saw the games, you saw the results, you saw what happened. Yes, they beat Southington. That's a great win for them. Southington's not that good. If Maloney and Southington played today, Maloney would beat them. So I wasn't surprised. I don't think I'm, looking at the 8 teams that are in Class L, Double L right now, Hall would get Southington round 2. I don't know. But looking at that, I don't think, I don't think the CCC is on that level yet. No. And it'll be really interesting to see who they get matched up with in the first round, because to be honest, we said that about Simsbury 2 years ago, and they went out and they beat Cheshire. So
Maloney rockets up, basically assuring itself a playoff spot with that win. They're 7-1. I mean, they got Glassbury and Platt left. Even if they lose one of those games, they're going to still be fine. St. Joseph, also another one of those teams. They got Trumbull at the end of the year. They got West Hill this week. They are pretty much assured to be in. Naugatuck's giving itself a great shot, but it's got 3 games left. Who knows with the NVL? Because, Naugatuck lost to Torrington early in the year, and Torrington is running an M, but
so did Woodland.
That's right. So Naugie's season will come down to that Ansonia game. We all thought it would be before the season. Then again, it may, if things keep working out the way Naugatuck needs them to. Maybe Wilton win. You lost. You got a Masuk loss to Newtown, and so things could be different. We'll see with Naga. They win this Wilton game. They're going to be putting themselves in a pretty good spot. So then you got Windsor, which was down 11-6 to Berlin, and then scored 34 points.
I think that score was the score of their baseball game back in the spring.
Yeah, 34 points in the second half to roll into that game. They have almost basically they've put themselves in position. They got to play Newington. They can knock Newington out for good. Newington had a crazy game themselves, and Patty Brown and Austin Howe and those guys have just against Platt, but defensively they've been suspect, and I'd like to see what happens with Windsor. It should be an interesting one, but Windsor puts itself in a good position. Bristol Central, Victor Rosa,
but Plainville's not going to be a layup for them.
No, and Ram actually has been playing better. I mean, he was unstoppable, but Ram hung around in that game. It wasn't quite the blowout you would think it was. So we'll see. Plainville shocked us a few weeks ago when they lost to Ram. So, 25-21. So that was interesting. But Bristol Central, they should get in. The big one here is Cheney Tech and Thames River. They play. Cheney Tech plays Quinnebog, and if they win that game, they're going to probably get in. And then you actually have Thames River, which plays Quinnebog and ATI the rest of the way, so their spot's not guaranteed. And then it's space. So I'm looking at Pete. I think about 2 spots here, and Masuk continues to make a drive. You got to give it up for the Panthers right now. Danny Shaban of Barlow, another Shaban. What I think is the third one, 398 yards and five touchdowns. He had I was just looking at his stats before the game. We haven't covered Barlow at all. And they've just been crushing it. They score 50-something points a game, Barlow, except for the handful of losses where they scored 30-something or maybe 26. I don't remember what it was. But Shaban had Masuk beat 5 TDs. They were up 34-19 in the third, and I think it was late in the third quarter. And Masuk, Dylan Jackson with another amazing game. Watch out for this. Talk about juniors on the rise. Dylan Jackson, 21 of 35, 378 yards, 3 touchdowns and a pick. Ryan Saku, $143 and a touchdown receiving, 9 catches. Jake Del Piano, 5 catches, 132 at TD. And Nick Saku ran 15 times for 140 yards. It was just no defense in that game. But Masuk Not out of the woods there, though. They got Newtown at the end of the year. They got Bethel and they got Newtown. If they can somehow beat Newtown, I think you're going to see them in there. And then obviously Wilton this week, took care of Ward. Now they get Norwalk. They get Cam Edwards and Norwalk. And, for them, it's huge because they got Pop Rugby beat them at the end of the year next week. But Norwalk, this is it for Wilton. And hopefully maybe maybe Thames River drops out, maybe Cheney, who knows? But and then after that, you have Hands kind of waiting in the wings.
Yeah, Hand's going to need a lot of help.
A lot.
The three tech schools in there, they really need, they need Quinnebog to beat Cheney, to knock Cheney to 7-2, and then Quinnebog needs to lose to Thames to go 8-2, and then they need Thames to lose to ATI on the 20th to then beat Quinnebog to go 8-2. That's really the only way that I think Hand with 3 losses can jump all 3 of those schools. But then they're also going to need Wilton to lose to Norwalk. Masuk should probably lose to Newtown. So they need the tech schools to all go 8-2 is what Hand doesn't. Look, if they get in, we all wrote them off a couple of weeks ago. We were like, all right, that's it. Hand done. But you look at their 3 losses: Prep, New Canaan, Shelton. Yeah. Those are all 3 double L playoff teams.
Double L schools, yeah. It's a joke. That's the biggest thing I'm just learning this year is that we need to fundamentally change this. If you're going to play for a certain playoff spot, you need to. And the Alliance has been doing a decent job of that. We've mentioned that, and they, Al thinks we kill them all the time, but that's what they've been trying to do is matching it up. It's the problem is shipping everybody all the way across the state. Like there are plenty of teams that are nearby you can do. Make a league out of it. Something. But this is kind of ridiculous. So that's kind of like you're looking at class L, and class M, it's kind of up in the air right now, but Branford, our boy, John Lamone, can breathe a little easier, not quite, but hey, they took care of business. Went all the way up to Avon, took care of business. Nate Chiffo had a 90-yard kickoff return to start the game, and he scored another TD late. They held Avon just to 7 points. Branford still has got the Hammonasset games left of Guilford, and they have Law. So they're not quite out of the woods yet, but I like Branford against Law, and then I think their season comes down to Guilford, and that's about it because they got East Haven at the end.
I got a text from a friend of mine from Branford who I've mentioned on the show a handful of times, and he texted me Friday night late, and he goes, wow, Branford, over Avon, 6-1. Because they have a shot to make the playoffs. I go, shot to make the playoffs. I go, they have a shot to win the whole damn thing.
Yeah, well.
Come on, man. You're looking at the rest of the teams that are sitting in L. ECC, Pequot, CCC, Avon, which I think is CCC, NVL, and Pequot.
Well, I mean,
if I'm going to pick.
I still like Killingly in that spot, and Rockville's playing great.
Oh, Rockville's playing awesome.
Rockville's playing great. They beat up on HK this week. Granby Canton getting off the schneid, beating Valley Regional. Plainville getting back on track, beating E.O. Smith. Okay. Avon still, I got a ways to go here, but Avon, they're trying to reschedule the Rocky Hill game. The Notre Dame game is canceled. They're trying to reschedule Rocky Hill for the 18th, I think. Then you got East Catholic this week, which they should probably win. Then Lewis Mills to finish things off Thanksgiving week. So I think Avon's going to be okay. I mean, if they beat Rocky Hill, at least they can get that thing scheduled. Then you have Torrington sitting in there, Wolcott and Watertown left. I actually like Torrington's chances now. They got a lot of points coming their way.
They do, and I mean, it would be great if Coach Rodriguez could get them into the playoffs. I think it would be the second or third time under him getting into the playoffs. But even Law's hanging there too. I mean, if Law could beat Hamden,
it puts themselves right in the picture. I don't know if that happens.
No, but you're looking at Coggin, and we were crowning them a couple of weeks ago. And now they're sitting here with Cromwell, Portland, and Granby, their next 2 games. They could very easily be 5-4 heading into Thanksgiving.
Yeah, they could be. They need some points in the worst way. They're just not getting it. Morgan would have been one, or Rockville. They're not going to get it. And Cromwell, Portland is probably the best team in Class S, and that's going to be really tough. So and you have the ATI hanging around, Watertown, Gilbert. I mean, it's a weird class as always. Still, like I said, Killingly's and Rockville and Branford, I think are your best ones there right now. So And then looking at Class S, Bloomfield continues this march along. I believe they've clinched. Again, I can't figure these points out, but I'm pretty sure they clinched. I'm pretty sure Ansonia with 9 wins is clinched. They got a few weeks off because they have the Derby forfeit. They play Naugatuck. And then Cromwell Portland, I'm pretty sure if they haven't clinched yet, they're close. They have 3 games left, so they haven't clinched yet. But just by beating Coggins, I think they'll be in good state, or a team below them.
But their schedule is not
it's not easy.
Coggins 5 wins, Stafford 4 wins, Rocky Hill 5 wins coming from the CCC. That's not easy. I mean, they should win all 3 of those games, but that doesn't mean they're going to. But it's great though, because I spoke to Randall Bennett at the beginning of the year, and there's not often you get coaches at the beginning of the year who's like, no, our team's the best. Like, he was straight up like, we have the best linebacking group in the state. We are going to be really good this year. And I have all the confidence in the world that we're going to be really good this year. And here they are staring a potential 10-0 season in the face. And that's awesome. I wish more coaches were like that.
No, we like Randall. Notre Dame, you're looking down a bit. Well, I guess the big wild card is New Fairfield, which rallied back. Didn't look great, but rallied back to beat Notre Dame Fairfield. Basically, almost knocked Notre Dame Fairfield out of race. They're still at 8 right now. It's not terrible, but New Fairfield this week, their season comes down to Newtown. That's it. They win that game, and New Melford's better than it has been. So the Candlewood Cup will be interesting too, but they need to beat Newtown. And can they beat Newtown? Newtown kind of was in a little bit of a dogfight last week, but was able to take care of Weston 35-28. So maybe that's good news for New Fairfield. But it wasn't good news for New Fairfield that they were down 20-6 to Notre Dame, which apparently only has, according to John Johnson, only has 22 kids.
Yeah, and they're sitting at number 8 right now, and they have 3 winnable games on their schedule.
Yeah, they do. But
I'm sorry, 2 winnable games. The Avon game keeps showing up, but that game's not.
Yeah, they got to get rid of that. Right, Stratford, Palmer, they should be able to win those. They're not going to get a lot of points from it. Rocky Hill could potentially jump them especially if they get that Avon game rescheduled. Tolland is in there. That's a big one. And then they beat Cromwell Portland. Rocky Hill is probably going to get in there. They need to win. They need to win out though. Stafford Summer Youth Winter can get back into this too, but they also have.
They got Rockville and Cromwell Portland. I mean,
again,
that's
lots of good points out there.
Yep.
But can they win?
They have to get them.
Ledyard, another one. Sheehan didn't help itself. Could have beat Hamden. Really could have put themselves in the race here. Now Sheehan's got to kind of pray. They're not going to get a lot of points from Lyman Hall or Harvard Public. Ledyard will get points, though, if they can beat Woodstock on the road this weekend, and then Fitch on Thanksgiving. Fitch, their rivals. And then Woodland, kind of took themselves off by losing it. So
they could get points. But they could get points if they could beat Naugatuck and Seymour. Right,
but they also have 3 losses. So that's another thing. If you're going to have 3 losses, it's going to be really tough to get the average unless your schedule points are that much better. Woodland's schedule points are better than most. But again, that's the wild card. I'm having a hard time trying to figure out how it's just a matter of are enough of the teams that you play this year going to win the next 2 weeks, and that's going to determine it. So, that's kind of like what we're looking at here. Those are the teams that are in contention. If you have any other ones in there, you think they're going to get in there. The math is really tough. Like I said, it's like the limbo level of inception. That's how deep we are going here to figure out how many wins they're going to get and how many points, potential bonus points. We haven't even figured out the math from this yet. And, it's been tough. The CIAC usually puts out its playoff calendar, and they're probably not going to have it at least for a few days. I hear Matt Fisher's working on it diligently, but it's just a mess. So before we get to our guests this week, let's take a quick look at the top 10. Pete, we finally had a shakeup in the top 10 after some of it wasn't like last week, but last week combined with this week, combined with Hall losing, combined with Fairfield Prep beating up on Shelton, we have a whole new poll here, and we were talking about it before we started recording it. Pete, not happy with this. Hall, number 10, only drops with their first loss, drops to number 10. Again, you lose one game, you usually don't want to drop out, but they've been living on the edge all year long. They fall at 10. Number 9, Killingly bumps up Number 8, Greenwich, the team that won't go away, as we discussed on the, they're still in the running for a Class AA playoff spot. Southington jumps way back up 2 spots, 9-7 because of that Hall loss. And then your boys, Maloney, all the way up. You were wondering about it last week, all the way up to number 6, from unranked to number 6 for beating Hall. Number 5 is Wilton. Number 4, Fairfield Prep, only up 1 spot. Wilton jumps from 7 to 5. New Canaan, St. Joseph, Darien. The FCX still holding serve here. They have, 5 teams in it. Shelton actually drops out, which I truly do not agree with.
Yes, you lost by 54 points, 56 points, whatever it was. But they still lost to Fairfield Prep.
Yeah.
So Shelton loses to Fairfield Prep, drops out of the poll. Hall loses to Maloney, who wasn't ranked, and stays in the poll.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, it's a little odd. Well, they only lost 1 game. That's the thing. Shelton lost their 2nd game, so shame on them. Anyway, let's get our columnist Jeff Jacobs on for this week.
Joining us now is Jeff Jacobs, our GameTimeCT columnist. Jeff, how is it going? We are in the home stretch here, and it's your first season covering high school football, like full season, right? Where it's all high school football all the time.
It's 1977 in Michigan.
Yeah. So what do you think? What are you seeing out there? What do you think?
Well, I've totally given up on my expertise after that Fairfield thumping of Shelton. I built up the No Mercy Gales, and evidently there was no mercy, but it was the Jesuits who showed no mercy. But which brings me to, I want to talk a little about sportsmanship, because I went back and checked on the blowout scores this year, and a couple of sportsmanship things. The thing that piqued me on one area was Inglewood High School out in L.A., 106, Morningside, 0. 56-0 after 1 period, 83-0 after halftime. It was 104-0, and Inglewood went for a 2-point conversion to make it 106. That kind of stuff, quite frankly, makes me puke. The principal from Inglewood did apologize, but one of the boosters, or I guess you'd call it boosters or supporters, and some of the kids on the team, they talked about how Inglewood had been kind of a laughing stock and had been getting beat all the time by lopsided scores, and how they'd been 0-10. And since the new regime came in, they're 25-1. They got 8 D1 players this year, scholarship offers play, which is all great. But their argument was like, 1 game. How's 1 game make us vulnerable to such hate after all the good things we've done? They just don't seem to understand that these things are not mutually exclusive. Because you turned around a program to win, because you got D1 offers, because in Inglewood there's some tough areas there, because the kids are involved in team sports and not in bad things. All great, but that doesn't mean running up to 106-0. You just don't rank them. It's holistic. It just drives me crazy. And I made a comparison earlier, and I hesitate to use it, but it's a little bit like when a mobster has knocked off some people, but gives great money to the church, and all of a sudden they go, he's a really good guy. Now, I'm not putting it on that kind of level, but that's the kind of mentality that, hey, we're not out there doing bad things, selling drugs or anything like that. So therefore, we can run up the score 106-0. It just doesn't. It's got to be more mature thinking and more nuanced thinking from the coaching staff and teaching. That's a lack of teaching from the coach. It really goes to the coach.
I agree with that. I mean, we've had that issue here, and we made national news because of our reaction to that issue, if you recall. I mean, Jack Cochran was unapologetic and would run up the score, period. 90-0. I mean, that's not quite this, but it was close. 75-0, depending on what it was. And, he's unapologetic about it. And finally, the coaches had enough, and they imposed a penalty on themselves that, ironically, he wasn't even around to really be there for. Jack, he got run out of New London after that, or no, it was New London. It was New Britain. Anyway, but the point being is that we've had that issue here.
Yeah.
I've seen guys do it the right way all the time. I'm reading the story about this now that California. I mean, we at least have a running clock after 35 in the second half. So that gives coaches the first half, you need to work on stuff. You haven't had a good game, blah, blah, blah. But when you get like 50-something points in the first quarter, I think it's time to get everybody out and call it a day.
Yeah, I want to point out. I went back and looked at all the scores this year, and I found, and I did a pretty good job combing through, only 10 examples of more than a 50-point difference,
right?
And most of them are. It was 48-0 or 54-8, and they scored 48-6, and they scored another touchdown to put them in the 53-54 point area. I found Stonington 60-0 over Griswold, SMSA 57-0 over Coventry Co-op, Ledyard 64, Montville 6, Danbury 54, Bridgeport Central 0. Staples 54, Stanford 0. Crosby 55, Derby 0. Cromwell Portland 54, Creek 0. And Bloomfield 53-0 over E.O. Smith, and West Haven 53 over 4-0. But then there's Fairfield Prep 54-0 over Shelton. That's a real game. You know what I mean? Some of these.
I will tell you what happened in that game. Here in my experience, I've found that coaches, for the most part, do call off the dogs down. They call off the dogs early. If it's the second half, and I think what you see, if you see scoring beyond 40 points, 50 points, it's mostly because it's the JV scoring. I don't think guys keep their varsity. Fairfield Prep took their JVs out. It was only, they went over 54 late. It was like 4 minutes left. That was a JV score. So by then it already built it up to that point. But
can I play devil's advocate here quickly? And I'm not saying I want to see 100-point blowouts by any stretch, but we're a year off of football. There's not enough, or there's not as much fully contact practices anymore. A lot of schools are barely getting JV teams in, barely getting JV games in, let alone freshmen. So are we thinking that maybe they're using this to get these guys some experience? Again, we lost a year last year. A lot of schools don't have JV teams. Are they using this to play? And then if you're going to use your JV players to get them some experience, are you going to tell them to sit on the 1 yard line? You know what I mean? Like,
but
there's a lot of different factors in here.
Pete,
in Connecticut.
Some of those points are well taken. But my point is that they've done a good job.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no 70-0 here. There's no 75 points. There's one, a couple of games that were really close to teams like Bristol Central ran up points, but they were in close games. But the teams are just, there's hardly any scores above 55, and they've done, first punishing them. It didn't, that rule they originally had logistically, I didn't like, but the spirit of that rule I did like. And so instead they've come to hit on this 35-point thing to let the points run when they get there. And I like it. My point is that it's working here, and it should continue to work here, and let's not fall back. And my only other thing was that I don't know if you guys saw ice hockey game out in the Pittsburgh area this like about a week ago. Armstrong, 50, 60 kids from Armstrong High were chanting horrible things toward the female goalie from Mars, the nearby high school. Just awful. And it went on. And why adults didn't jump in and stop it, I can't figure out. But anyway, they banned the entire school from going to any more games of hockey, and that specific group is going to be subject to some discipline. I hope the discipline's harsh. But my point is, we got to be ever vigilant on stuff like that. We had an incident here with East Catholic and Montville, correct? Mm-hmm. Cheerleader, and there's an element of he said, she said there, but there's also some element of, it was no reason to disbelieve her. And there was some evidence. And then there was the Cheshire thing, anti-Semitic kind of trying to figure out what was going on there, which does not look like anything bad happened there. And it got remedied. But Pete, you saw something the other night that
it was
in a bunch of those.
This was more of a if you want to go back a couple of years to New Britain and Southington where they didn't shake hands.
No, I'm talking about this year.
Yeah. Well, Maloney Xavier a couple of weeks ago. Maloney ran through the cheerleader line for the Xavier players, and they had their banner on the floor, and they just kind of ran over it and kind of broke it.
Well, I would suggest that there's one thing that Kevin Frederick, I hope he did, was that his heroes ran over the banner. I would suggest Coach have put down another banner and have his troops run up and down the stairs at his high school to kind of tell them that, hey, you like being bad sports, you like doing it, let's run up and down some stairs, see how it goes. That's what I think would be a good solution to that. And maybe a couple kids will puke as much as I wanted to puke after that 106-0 score, and maybe they won't run over other teams' banners, other cheerleaders' banners in the future.
I think a big part of it here, I think some of the things you'll see here is because a lot of coaches have told me this, is that because you have so many crossover conference games, you're not familiar with these guys. So you kind of, kids think they can get away, maybe even coaches think they can get away with some of the behaviors you might see at some of these games. That they, you're not gonna have to play them the next year, or one of those deals. Maybe that's been a part of it too. And I think all this, all the cross conference stuff is maybe contributed to it. But I think overall in Connecticut we've done a really good job.
Yes,
50-point policy was a ridiculous thing with the suspension. But I mean, if you really want to go back and look at the history of that, it was all out to get Jack. And Jack wasn't even there for the first year. It was the first couple of years it was instituted. And that kind of, and then they took years to get rid of it. I've heard people, they still don't like the running clock at 35. I mean, the state record for comebacks is 28. So, what happens if you get to 35? Will there be no 35-point comeback ever? And there have been certainly, and I look at some of these, certainly some instances. But I think you got to be smart. Apparently in this California thing, they didn't even, I guess you can ask for a running clock and they have to be agreed to both sides. They didn't even want anything to do with that. And that smacks of just awful sportsmanship. And I don't see that here, at least, recently.
No, I think the state's done a good job. And I particularly want to point out Darien against NFA. I watched that game on the day feed, and it was 42-0 in the first half. NFA couldn't stop them. And Darien did everything in its power to keep it down to 49 points. And it could have been, really ugly. And Mike Forget and his staff really did a good job of handling that at that point. So they're out there. It can be handled right. It can be handled, and I think most of Connecticut's has got it right. And in a lot of ways, like you said, 35 should be 42. I don't know. You could argue that, but or 40 or whatever. But the scores indicate that it's working.
Yeah.
Well, let's just go back to 2019 and this team. I talked about it on this show a lot, but Bloomfield in 2019, I just pulled up their schedule quickly: 54-0, 68-0, and 74-0.
Not good. Not good.
Not good.
And
not good.
There's no reason to beat teams by anything more than when you have to.
Right.
No. And then brag about it on social media.
Yeah. I think 49 is the threshold. I think we all kind of got it. And once you reach 49, who cares? Greenwich. Shelton got beat by 53. But that's never happening. It never happens in this rivalry. Ever.
And that's a top 10 matchup. Those are two playoff teams. Like the games that I'm talking about were against teams that, probably, had maybe 20 kids or less, though Bloomfield did get a taste of their own medicine in the finals. So,
Bloomfield, they're only once this year at 53-0. I will say the teams that are worrisome sometimes are kind of mediocre teams. They're playing all of a sudden they're playing a very weak one, and they take out their frustrations. That's it.
It happens.
They're not versed in keeping the score down, and they go and they get over emotional, and they just start.
You should go check out some baseball in the spring. There have been games. We have a run rule in the state of Connecticut. I'm not 100% sure what it is exactly. I think it's like 10 after 5. But like there are some games that don't even get to 5, and it's like 17-0, and guys are running into outs and bunting and stuff like that. And that I feel like is just bad. Baseball is a game where you need your timing. You know what I mean? Like it's very up or down. It's very momentum based with your hitting. And to ask guys to look at 3 strikes or swing through pitches or bunt or get tagged out, I think is ridiculous to do. But baseball is obviously a completely different game than like football or hockey. In hockey, where you could just dump and chase for the rest of the game, or basketball with no shot clock, you just hold the ball.
I think you have to be mindful of what's going on the field. If it looks like if you're beating a team up, you're scoring left and right, and they are way overmatched, time to call the dogs off early. Otherwise, I think a good rule of thumb is do everything you need to do in the first half. If it becomes a blowout, then put your JVs in.
Though I will say, a couple of years ago, when I was working at the Register Citizen in Torrington, I think this was the 2014 season. Gilbert Northwestern made the playoffs, and that year it was 2015. I'm sorry, and Gilbert was playing Housatonic on Thanksgiving, and went up by like a ton. And Gilbert took their guys out. Or it's 2014, 2013, I think it was. And Gilbert took their guys out, and Housatonic continued to throw and pulled themselves all the way back into the game, where then Gilbert had to put their starters back in.
Yeah.
It was something like 27-0. I'm looking at it now. It was 27-0. Housatonic scored like 22 straight points, and Gilbert had to put their starters back in at the end of the game. The Gilbert coach was pissed. He's like, I was being nice. I was being nice, and they're kicking onside kicks.
Which is why I say you want to score 49 in the first half, go for it.
Yeah.
But after that, Jeff, thanks a lot. That's
thank you, Sean.
Good stuff. We appreciate it. We'll see you next week. We got plenty of playoff stuff to talk about as we get further here, and we're almost there. So appreciate it.
I tell you,
This is how it's supposed to be!
Joining us on the show is, of course, the 7-year head coach of Fairfield Prep. This guy's just came off a massive win last week. One that kind of made my eyes pop out, and I was hearing it from all the fans at Prep. We welcome Coach Hellstern, Keith Hellstern, here on the show with us to talk a little bit about that. Patton, look at this. You gonna give a big speech, Coach?
Nothing that dramatic. Just we'll call it window dressing for right now in my classroom.
Yeah, that's Military Appreciation Week, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we had a lot of great stuff. I don't know if you saw the Killingly thing that they did. I'm not sure if you saw. They had this big production. It was great. It was insane.
I did not. I gotta check it out then. I'm always a fan of that, especially on a week like this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, so like Coach, well, welcome aboard. First time you having me on here, and what can you say about your guys? You had a little bit of time to digest, looking at the film a little bit. And I know we talked to you, me and Mike Cardell talked to you a little bit after, and it wasn't one of those victories you thought would, if you were given a prediction to say 54-0, but it sounded like your guys were really confident. Ryan O'Connell talked about it. I mean, that time Nate Smith, they all talked about how confident they were going in this one against a team they have problems with over the years.
Yep. I mean, for us going into Friday night, it's definitely a rivalry game versus Shelton. Great program. We've unfortunately been on the short end of some really tight losses, not counting 2019 against them. Like the point differential in my 10 years, 11 years coaching here with them was only 4 points, but we'd been down 3 wins to like 7 losses. So we knew the margin of error was going to be small. It's something that we preached this week. We had a great alumni come in and speak to the guys. Ryan Utzler, who's class of 97, had a lot of success here, played at BC. He brought that up kind of out of nowhere, and it reiterated a lot that we were talking about as a staff. Players just had a great week. I give all the credit to them, and my coaching staff put together a great plan. And we made that margin of error something that we could control. And the boys went out there and did their very best. And we were fortunate to have such a strong victory.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at some of your I'm trying to look over some of the history of it. I know you haven't played Shelton since the SEC started. That's when it's only been the last 20 years. But
right.
I couldn't find a similar victory unless you counted the 75-0 one over East Haven, the game I was at back in 2003. I remember the one over that team wasn't great, the East Haven one, but I remember the one against Fairfield, against Notre Dame West Haven. They were defending champs. They had a few great players, and Prep just went in there. It was an all-time great game at Alumni with the slop. I never heard about it, but it was I think it was 41-6, and I thought it was a lot more than that. But this victory was as far as points go. I mean, right. You want to discount it, but it was ridiculous. It was probably the most complete Prep victory I've ever seen. Let's put it that way.
It was a complete game. That's the best way to describe it, honestly. And I think that's the thing, again, that we're going to take away from it and learn from it, and not dwell on the fact that it went very well. It just, I think it kind of strengthens everything we've been telling the kids, that as you keep moving through this season, through 2021, your ceiling is still above you. You haven't reached it. And look, Friday was a great example of us playing a complete game, offense, defense, special teams. And to do that against a very good program in a rivalry game, great time to kind of get another step towards that realization. So we're going to use it as fuel, but we're not to sound like someone who's in the NFL, but we're on a Xavier, and we need to be, because that's a big game. It's a huge game. We have two very, very big games coming up, and the boys need to use this as a lesson as to what you need to do to be successful.
We got a Wesleyan guy already quoting Belichick, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, I was very Belichick.
I got to plug the alma mater. That's what I got to do.
Yeah, I mean, three shutouts in a row. What is clicking on this defense? Because obviously, even the loss against Greenwich, our only loss this year, they only allowed 14 points.
Right. Playing to our strengths, we knew coming into the season, we needed to switch some things around schematically to play to the kids that we had. I think that's been very successful. My defensive coordinator, Justin Thomas, and my defensive staff have done a great job getting those guys in a position to play aggressively, play soundly. I do think the things that we have going for us on defense is our athleticism, our speed to the ball. We are not the biggest group, but we do play physically. So you combine all those things, and I think that's a recipe for success. And we've gotten better as we've gone along, just like every other aspect, hopefully, in the game. And sometimes defense is a little bit easier to get gelled than offense, especially with so many new faces out on the field. And that has helped them kind of lead the charge a little bit and definitely do a great job the last three games.
Well, you're going to shout out Justin Thomas. I'm going to take the opportunity to shout out Justin and I's alma mater, Southern Connecticut.
Yes.
You talk about just different guys stepping up. Your offense seems like you guys are really spreading the ball out. One guy's not really taking over. How beneficial is that for you guys to be able to put the ball in a lot of different players' hands, either in the run game or through the air?
We're fortunate to be able to do that. I mean, that's, again, when you talk about playing complete football, if you can do that offensively with this kind of system, and we're getting to the point now where we have a great balance between run and pass when we want to, based on game plan. We're very confident that we have several guys that can help us win a game offensively, produce, whether it's yards, points, combination of both. And again, that's a credit to the staff, getting them better. We have a first-year starter at quarterback in Connor Smith, who's doing a fantastic job and only getting better as he goes. But the group as a whole, our line is really developing, which was probably the most inexperienced part of the team coming into the season. So a lot of things clicking right now, and hopefully we'll continue to develop.
Yeah, it seems like offense, it's that one of those key areas you really like to see a little bit more improvement from. I mean, the Notre Dame West Haven game was really good because that was one of those instances where they scored and you guys were able to answer and able to kind of put the foot on it. But it wasn't like that. I mean, it was like that way. And then you had the Hill House game where everything wasn't working. And then you had the Greenwich game, which they're good defensively. So that, when looking back at it, it's a little different. But I'm sure offensively, like I said, probably the most inexperienced stuff. Meanwhile, you got the defensive guys like Ryan and those guys just running all over the place. And they're like, look like they hate to use the analogy, but they look like the 85 Bears. They smothered Shelton. It was like, what, 21 yards total offense, like 1 first down, something like that. It's ridiculous.
So it was 1 first down on a penalty.
Yeah, or something. It was
statistically, it was one heck of a game. That's for sure. And again, credit to the kids, credit to the staff, and taking nothing away from Shelton, because we knew it was going to be a very, very tough game. But I'm glad that we were able to kind of dictate the way that we were, because you don't expect that to happen. You expect to hopefully play your best, and the outcome of our best on Friday was pretty special.
Yeah,
just to rewind.
Go ahead.
Just to rewind back to that Hill House game. I actually saw you that Saturday after,
Right.
But you talked about it in your earlier answer to Sean about the 3 phases of the game. And when you have looking back on that game now that you guys won and it's over, to have the special teams come through in a game, have you ever had a team like that where, you know, the offense might not be clicking, the defense, you know, is playing well, but you guys still aren't scoring, but then have the special teams come through? You know, it's kind of like the lost facet of football, right? People talk offense, defense, but, you know, special teams can win you games, and clearly that did against Hill House.
Absolutely. No, that game was one of the oddest games I've ever been a part of, player or coach, but thank goodness we spent a fair amount of time on special teams. Again, I've got a great coordinator there in Matt McCloskey. I've got kids that can, again, run and do the things that we need to. The kicking game actually on Friday night against Shelton, shout out to Aiden Graham, my kicker, and I've got a great young punter as well. Those guys play their tails off, and they've helped make us a more complete team. And that is the truth about special teams. It's a third of what you do, and it makes a difference in field position, and you don't want to have points lost. You know, margin for error, like we talked about at the beginning of the interview. So those are the things, again, we want to continue to keep working on and be good at, because those are things, especially as you get late in the season, and hopefully if we're fortunate enough to be in the postseason, you have to be great at those things, because those are the things that help you win.
Tell me a little bit about some of your guys, Coach. I mean, especially Ryan O'Connell, who's just been, you know, talk about spiritual leaders and just leader by example and vocal, and he's kind of the complete package, and he's a great player too.
Yeah, Ryan's he is definitely 100% football player. He's doing a fantastic job leading by example. I think he's grown up as a young man during the season, also as being a captain. I think it's honestly the thing I'm most proud of him for. But physically and setting the sort of tone for us, he's done a fantastic job. All 4 of our captains have. I'm fortunate to have 3 of them that are defensively right now. We've got Ryan, we've got Tymaine Smith, who also plays some offense for us as well, returns kicks. He had a big strip and fumble recovery for a touchdown on Friday. Jack Mullen plays defensive end for us and some tight end. He's doing a fantastic job. And then I've got James Iropoli, who's one of our starting wide receivers. But this team is being led by some great players, but it is succeeding because of a lot of kids playing up. A lot of kids, again, Sean, you and I talked about it after the game, learning on the job, and young guys, inexperienced guys. For the number of guys that are on the field for us that have ever had any varsity experience, I think there's 3 kids.
Wow.
So a lot of these guys are stepping up and playing at a high level. And I think that's kind of the function of us being hopefully stronger now than we were week 3, week 4, even though we might have been playing well or rough around the edges in some other ways. But a lot of people contributing, a lot of people playing it together, and we're getting a team effort, which is what you want ultimately to be successful.
What did you do? Like, how much did you work them during that off week? You know, I remember you were really guys were in that game versus Branford right to the very end. And, what was the message going into that week? And, because you played hand, but, that was your first really big test.
Right.
I mean, looking back, hand was a good win too, but, and I heard some of your coaches telling your kids, this is why we work you guys as hard as we do. But it sounded like that week was particularly tough.
Honestly, I think it was more of just a little bit of a revelation when you lose a game that again, you could have won. What are the things that we control to make sure that we don't put ourselves in a position where it's close, where we don't finish it as opposed to the other team? So mentally and from a maturity standpoint, especially from our seniors on down, I think that was the biggest message. We didn't go, through the roof about anything beyond that, working on our fundamentals, going back to the things that we needed to do, maybe doing a little bit more self-assessment on things that we could help let's say offensively, schematically, some of the things, little nuances we can get better at too. But it's a lot of self-reflection at that point, because when you're coming back off of that, you've got big games right off the bat, and you have to be ready to go. And you can't be one loss can't become two because it didn't go well.
Right. Same
thing as saying one big win is not going to justify you winning the next one either. It's Pete and I were talking about that before. It's not nobody's guaranteed anything. So that truth makes every day that important.
It's interesting. Prep is really interesting because there's been so many great teams over the years I've seen, and then there's always been, like you mentioned, they have that signature win, and then something falls apart. Or there have been some really good ones, but your guys are trying to get back to the state playoffs. That's always a goal, and then obviously the schools have won a state championship since '88, which has always been people don't like to talk about it that much, but you had a really, looking back, you guys had a really good team in the making last year. COVID kind of wipes that out, and it must get to the point like, oh, what do we got to do here?
Right.
But I don't know. You look like, I don't know. Do you think you had a team that really could have done something last year?
2020 would have been, I think, a heck of a year for us. The one thing I'll say about whatever the past is, the best thing I think about this place, there's honestly a tremendous culture at the school, because the focus that we have, truth be told, is to develop these boys into young men, and football or athletics is a big extension of that. I knew it the minute I got the good fortune to be in this job. And I also know for a fact that, the sort of support that we have from our families, our administration, the school community in general, game night has been fantastic coming back without 2020 season. I think you could see that at the hand game. You definitely saw it on Friday. And it's not just because of the result, it's because of the passion about the school, seeing the kids succeed. Winning's hard too, right? And winning's not something that's guaranteed. Yeah, winning is hard. I tell the kids that, I said, we're going to enjoy every win, even if it's ugly, because this is hard.
Right.
But we're going to learn from it. If it was hard, we're going to enjoy it if it feels as good as it possibly could. And Friday did in a lot of ways, but we're not going to rest on it, because there's a lesson from COVID right there. You're guaranteed nothing. And we have a responsibility to each other to do our very best, because we've invested a lot in it. But I have a tremendous amount of respect for the place that I'm able to coach at, the people I coach and work with, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for the people that we play. I don't take any of it for granted. And we're in a good situation right now, but we have to control it one day at a time. And hopefully it's going to give us past two more games. But we're focused on Xavier.
I saw that Nick Morris was watching and loving every minute of Friday night. And how proud are you guys that, what he's been able to do? I know he did what he needed to do. He got out of here, and Connor went as well. And, I heard kids asking about how Westlake was doing. And, it seems like there's still a great bond between you guys and the guys who left. And, I guess once prep, always prep kind of thing. Right?
It's a big piece of it. I didn't go to prep. I'm a public school kid from New Jersey, but one thing I've learned in the time that I've been here is they talk a lot about brotherhood, but we live it. And the alumni from decades ago feel it just as strongly as young men that were here a couple years ago. And that's another thing about the place. I think that gives it a lot of character and strength, and why stuff like athletics, whether it be football or anything else, is a great manifestation of that. Whether you're on the team or you're cheering for them, there's a sense of connectivity there, and family. And we talk about our football program as being a family, and we mean that. It's not always easy, like family life isn't. It's a lot of work, but the benefits in the long run, I think, are tenfold for what these guys are putting into it. And I'm extremely excited for what they've done, and looking forward to what they have left.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. It's pretty incredible. Just, I've covered a lot of Fairfield Prep baseball and hockey, obviously, and football. But anytime there's a big game or a champion, like all these Fairfield Prep fans are just like in my email or on Twitter, and they come from everywhere. It's wild, and then, you talk about all the kids go and support every team, like whether it's packing out the football game or Wonderland Ice Arena. I mean, got to be a little bit of pressure to perform when you got like all those people there.
It's first off, what you're talking about, Pete, it's a tremendous network of people. Again, that extension of that experience and that family. From a pressure standpoint, again, we put the pressure on ourselves, both as a program, our kids, our coaches. No one is more invested in it than the people that have to live it on a daily basis. And, again, a comment I made after the game on Friday was the biggest compliment I can say about a great group of kids right now is that they're not satisfied. They're willing to keep growing. They're bought into it, which is always awesome, but it's because they realize that they're in charge of their own development as much as anything else. So that pressure's self-imposed, but we're lucky to have it. It's something that I think kind of fuels you to be your best. And that's why kids come here. What we're trying to do, win or loss, is to try to grow from it because, you're not guaranteed a victory. No one bats 1,000 in any sport. So we have a job to do, but that job is to kind of take it a day at a time and be our best selves. That's really something I tell the kids all the time.
You mentioned you're from Jersey, just outside New York. Just what is it? I forget what it's called, like Ridge.
Glen Ridge,
right? I ended up in Wesley. How do you just take us through the journey? How did you end up at Fairfield Prep? I know Tom took over in 10, and
right,
it was right after the Rich Magden years, and it was kind of a new thing. But how did you end up here? That's the big question.
I basically from graduation on, for me, I just like teaching and coaching was a calling. It was either going to be that or law school, and I'm glad I went in the direction that I did, because it's been the thing that's basically been kind of my guide professionally for a long time. But I went from out of college. I was 1 year at a boarding school teaching and coaching. The coaching bug bit me really hard, got into college coaching. I was fortunate to coach for 8 years at the Division III and the FCS level. I was at Amherst College. I was at Columbia University. I was at my alma mater. I had one or two other secondary school stops in between. And then at the end of my Wesleyan run, which was 4 years, I was looking for something that was going to be a bit more, I hoped, stable, but at a place where I could apply my passion and hopefully do a great job. I had played with guys from Fairfield Prep in college. I had recruited guys from Fairfield Prep when I was a college coach, sent out a bunch of cold resumes. One of the responses I got was from Tom, who had just been hired as the head coach. And it just so happened that he and I hit it off. I was able to interview a couple of times. An opening came up in the history department. And here I am 12 years later, and could not be more thankful for the opportunity given.
Yeah, and you love it, huh?
Yes, I think you have to love it. It's a labor of love, but to, again, in the long run, see these young men not only get something from football that I felt like I did when I played, and to see them grow as people at the same time, there's a lot of fulfillment in that. It's a lot of hard work, but that comes with the territory if you want to try to do it well. And again, that doesn't always guarantee you wins, but it's got to be something that's heartfelt. And that's what we try to do.
The thing about prep, it's amazing is just how different it's changed in the last 10 years. I mean, you got a new stadium. I mean, state of the art.
Yep.
The only thing that bugs the hell. I mean, I don't know how you guys do it, but is the lines. Bugs the hell out of me. I don't know how you do it.
I'm not going to argue with you on that one, Sean.
But, and you guys also do have a great social media account. Whoever runs I know who runs the Fairfield Prep.
He's good.
Football account. He's great.
Yes, we're very, very, very fortunate. That's a nice way to kind of, again, connect to that network, keep people in the loop, but also add that sort of energy that you need in 2021 around the program. Again, very lucky from my end to have those sort of people and support.
Well, yeah. So, you got 2 games left here. I mean,
Yep.
Nothing's, like you said, nothing's a given. Xavier, we've seen them really good. West Haven's playing great lately. Yep. So by no means are you guys fit, but this is a big stretch here. But, I don't know what, that's the sky's limit for this team, huh?
I think from our end, it's, again, we preach it 1 week at a time. We really do. And we are very, very aware of what we need to try to do this week up at Xavier. So that's all we're going to concentrate on. Do the kids have high hopes? Of course they do. Do we? Sure we do. But, If you're not present, you're not going to be successful. I think right now in this season proves that for a lot of people. You can win or you could lose in a very competitive game any week, no matter how good you are, I think, in Connecticut high school football right now. So taking nothing for granted. Excited about what we have in front of us this week going up to Xavier, and we want to work hard to get that W.
Personally, I think you guys are good, in great shape. I hope you get in, and I hope I see a Darien Fairfield Prep rematch from like lacrosse season, because I know those lacrosse players on both sides of this thing that that there's just been great rivalries between these schools the last year and change.
Definitely.
All right, Coach. Well, we know you got to go. We appreciate you giving us a little time here, and great work. Obviously you guys have done a great job, and I just keep chugging, I guess, right?
That's it. We're going to keep moving along, and again, very proud of our guys and our school to support us the way we have been all the time, but to hopefully manifest it and have a great finish to the season. So thanks for having me on.
Hey, thanks for coming on, Coach. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Very much. Good luck.
Take care. Thank you.
All right.
So Pete, that was Keith Hellstern. Look, I know he's like Mr. He sounds like a college coach. I mean, he spent a lot of time there, and I want to talk about guys who are speaking the what they need to say to keep their team focused, one game at a time. Don't look too far ahead. I mean, but hey, it's working for them. They're rolling.
They're a team on a mission, and it's not. They don't have the easiest road, Xavier and West Haven, to finish the season, but I wouldn't bet against Fairfield Prep right now. And I was at their Keith's first playoff win a couple of years ago. They beat Southington. And that was a big emotional game for them, and they left it all out there. And, if their defense continues to play the way that they've been playing, I mean, you look at the rest of Class Double-L, and I'm already licking my chops for Fairfield Prep Darien at Boyle, right?
Oh man! After all the lacrosse battles we had with those two this season, Fairfield Prep beating them the second in the playoffs, knocking Darien out of the running for state championship. So, and there are lots of guys on those teams. There are lots of lacrosse players. I mean, Minikis, Comiskey, just to name a few. We have so it's should be a lot of fun. All of a sudden, my only thing with Prep is that I just, I hope their offense gets into gear a little bit there, because, if the defense has, you got a team that can solve that defense somehow, they might be in trouble. But who is it? I don't see it. Maybe Greenwich, maybe Darien, maybe that's it. So,
I mean, if Greenwich gets in, that would be wild. And I would get such a big kick out of that, because if they're going to get in, they're going to get in as an 8. And then they got to go to Darien. The two haven't played this year. I mean, that's not a cakewalk first round game. And it's a rematch of the first round from 2 years ago.
Oh, baby. Let's go. So, well, we got a lot of stuff going on this week. It's almost time to start getting ready to figure out these playoff points and
Are you kidding me? We're already doing the Thanksgiving polls. We're already doing the Thanksgiving capsules.
Well, we'll be doing things. I can't wait. My favorite week of the entire sporting year. Connecticut's greatest sporting day. Sure, there's some teams playing nice, including Fairfield Prep, West Haven. But anyway, it's getting really dark here. I forgot to turn my lights on. So let's get out of here, Pete. Thanks for joining us. Good podcast. Don't forget, we do this on a live action version that usually comes out the day after, because it takes time to put together. But if you're listening to this and haven't seen the live podcast yet, it's on GameTimeCT.com, or you can check it out on YouTube as well. That'll do it for this. Thank you for Keith Hellstern for joining us. Thank you, Jeff Jacobs, for joining us. And, of course, for Pete Perguaga, I am Sean Patrick Boyd. This has been the Game Time. This has been the Meat Grinder on GameTimeCT.
Love you.